Welcome to Envisioned Broadcasting, the station designed to encourage, equip, and empower you for growth and success. Presents Women Emerge with Mellisa Lambert, a show that shines a light on spiritual growth, health, purpose, and financial education. It's time to emerge and begin to live out your dreams, walk into your destiny, while making a difference in the lives of many.
Welcome to Women Emerge. I am your host, Mellisa Lambert, and I'm so excited to come into your home via podcast or even listening to the radio station live. I want you to know that this show is being sponsored by WomenEmergeNetwork, a network created for women, man, and children to help bring families, dreams, destiny, and their businesses together. Listen, it is Wellness Wednesday. Every Wednesday, we want you to tune in and let's learn together. We want to share about everything wellness. When it comes to wellness, many people think only of our health. But understand, on this show, we will discuss spiritual wellness, your health, your wealth, and your mental wellness. And today, we're still talking wellness, yes, but we're going to talk about some trauma. We're going to talk about different types of trauma that people face. You know, one of the things that I can remember about a year ago, I started digging deeper into womb trauma healing. To the point where I would connect with certain ladies and really kind of just have a conversation with them, and come to find out after listening to their story, I was able to pinpoint the actual trauma that they have faced, which has caused an issue within their womb space. And there's different types of trauma. You have emotional trauma, physical trauma that occurs in so many people's life, right? And I'm going to just talk about certain traumas for us. And when you think about trauma, it's when a person experiences a distressing event or series of events that have occurred, such as abuse, can be physical, sexual, emotional abuse, or even a bad accident. You know, it can be something sexual violent, combative issues that had occurred. They even can be emotional, where it's like it's a trigger for them. I know that I've suffered with my own for emotional trauma, and that's not something that should be played with, right? And we want to really reassure people that are listening today, whatever trauma that you're facing, know that there is help. Know that there is hope. When you think about emotional trauma, you think about mental response to disturbing events or situation. When you think about, again, emotional trauma, you think about the response from, a direct after the fact event, something directly happened after, and then it caused you to be triggered. Chronicle long-term response from prolonged or repeated events, right? When you think about emotional trauma, you think about the response to multiple events that may or may not be related. And then you have physical events, seriously bodily harm or injury to the body. These are things that happen to us, and it is sad that it does occur, but guess what? We're going to talk about it. A lot of people don't talk about it, and we wonder, and I remember a young lady that just had a conversation with her, and I remember her sharing her story about she having fibroids. And I began to kind of dig deeper with her and talk about this fibroid that she had growing inside of her. And I said to her, do you understand, that fibroid is not a sperm, right, which goes in and plants a seed, which is called a child, right? It's more than that. It stems from so many things. It stems from, emotional issues. It stems from, sometimes stuff what we eat. It stems from, lack of, support. So that causes us to really have some form of issue that we can grow into. It can be a trauma that occurred in our life that allows this fibroid to start growing inside of us, right? So I began to have this conversation with her, and come to find out, I began to pinpoint the different events in her life that this trauma occurred that grew this fibroid. I remember talking to her about one event. The first event was a bad argument with her mother. That was where the first trauma, the growth of the fibroid began. Then it attached itself to her boyfriend. Then after it attached to her boyfriend, it began to grow into another part of another fibroid. And then after that, she had lost her job. And from losing her job, it now grew into another fibroid, right? And she had about, I believe, 5 different fibroids that was inside of her. And and every part of it, we were able to pinpoint something, a traumatic event that occurred. Do you realize that 40 to 80% of women, that's globally, to be exact with you, because this is Fibroids Month, that has fibroids that's been growing inside of them. It affects everywhere, anywhere from 40 to 80% of women. We're talking fibroids here, right? So we want to I'm not trying to say fibroid is the first source of trauma, but I just remember this young lady when we start pinpointing a different trauma that she had and how it happened to her, and how each and every trauma that started growing her life grew the fibroid, either grew it bigger or added an extra part of it. It's like it grew second, third, four of them, 5 of them inside of her womb space. And that right there was the start of her own trauma, where she did not know what her body feels like, because she was always constantly bleeding. She was always feeling discomfort. And when I began to talk to her about the different trauma, did recognizing the trauma help her to release those fibroids? Absolutely not, because she did have the surgery, but I was able to identify why this thing occurred, why those fibroids grew. And she was like, oh my gosh, I remember this happened around this time, and this is when this fibroid started growing. And then when you just mentioned this about my boyfriend, this is when the other one started growing, because over time she grew five different fibroids. 5 different, legion, I don't know what they call it, the different tumors that is attached to them. Like, she grew them. It began to be something really small, then it began to grow in like numbers, right? And the size of them, it's like seeds. It was just like multiplying on her different, bulks of masses that was so discomforting for her, right? So I want you to begin to start identifying types of traumatic events that has happened in your life, and let's see if you can work through that. So this podcast today is we're going to stress on just trauma, because I remember my first traumatic event, and I never talked about it. Then after that, I buried my trauma event and went through my teenage years, my young adult years, my adult years, got married, and still held that trauma on me. And I never was able to talk about it, because to me it was too painful to talk about. Even bullying is a traumatic event. I remember my first bully. I remembered how that affected me, and it's so crazy. I remember years later, after graduating, this one person that bullied me in middle school turned up in my parenting school class. And because of conflict of interest, I had to release her because I did not want my past trauma of her bullying me in middle school to affect my result in turning the information into the court. So that was a traumatic event, being bullied in middle school. Some people go through domestic violence as a part of a traumatic event that happened in their life, right? Natural disaster, losing your home, losing items, losing things. That's a traumatic event, being in a storm, right? I remember the last storm we had here last September in 2022. Right, 2023 and 2023. And I was actually working for a call center at that time and taking in claims. And it was devastating to hear how, people lost their homes and they have nothing to go back home to. And, I remember this one lady, and it breaks my heart to hear that story. She was 73 years old, and she actually at the time she was only herself. Lived on the I forgot what part of it's an island here in Florida. She lives on. I'm thinking I think it's called, I can't remember the island in Florida, but she lived on this island in Florida, and I tell you, it was that devastated that entire part of Florida, to be exact with you. And she called in to put the claim in, and she was like, she has no home to return to, because at the time she was living in one of those communities that has you can put your car. I forgot what the portable house is, right? And she said the entire community was destroyed, and she has no one. All her family was in New York, and she lost her cat because she had 2 cats. And, yes, she was thankful for her life, but that natural disaster was the event that was traumatic for her. And she was crying. She said she don't have nothing but the clothes on her back. And she said she doesn't know what to do. And I was like, oh, my gosh, what a devastating event that is so traumatic to this lady at 73 years old. So trauma has so many different events, where even verbal abuse. You have people that are verbally abusive. A lot of narcissistic guys. I mean, I can tell you, I lived with one. So, that, to be honest with you, it's not the same as physical abuse, but it literally plays with your mind. Just having the thought of what they're saying to you, physical, verbally, like telling you that you're nobody, telling you you're not worthy, telling you, all those things will allow a person to replay that in their head, and it causes that person to have a trauma. I remember an incident that even occurred. I'm going to be real, because that's what I'm going to be. Again, you are listening to Women Emerge with Mellisa Lambert, and I'm just so excited that we can come on today and just talk. And we're talking about trauma. We're talking about the different types of trauma, emotional and physical trauma. And I tell you the truth, many of us go through some form of trauma. It can be childhood abuse, child neglect, bullying, physical abuse, domestic violence. You can have natural disaster trauma events. You can have sexual abuse. Some people are dealing with, even sex trafficking, substance abuse, accidents, war, verbal abuse. Those are, traumatic grief, meaning like a death. I can tell you, for me personally, my trauma when I was back-to-back miscarriage and one stillborn. And my first miscarriage, I didn't know what that was. So I was like, oh, okay. The second miscarriage was, again, a shocker for me. Now, my body was like, hold up, wait a minute, something's happening. And I was just like shocked, because, again, this is a second round and I'm losing a baby. So to know the third time I got pregnant, I was devastated, because I was so afraid to move out the bed. I was afraid to get up and go anywhere. I was afraid to eat anything. I was afraid to do anything, because I did not want to lose the third child. But the trauma for me came was when they told me that my son, Caleb, God rest his soul, had anencephaly. So it's okay to go through it's not okay to go through a miscarriage, but at least it's not kicking you, it's not moving, you don't see his hands or his feet, you don't know the sex of the child when you have a miscarriage. But for my third round of trauma, to know that this child is growing inside of me. He's kicking me. He's moving around. I know that I'm having a boy. I even named him Caleb Chiazam. That was his name, and his first and middle name. Won't say his last name. But just to know that this child is growing inside of me. Now, here go the trauma. Them telling me, oh, guess what? You have to abort this child. Or if you go all the way to full term, it's either he's going to take your life or you're going to take his. I'm like, what? And I'm like, why? Then they shared about what my son had. It's called anencephaly. His skull wasn't fully formed. And if you research anencephaly babies, it's a very rare thing that happened, but it does happen around the world. And it was my faith that I end up having a baby that had anencephaly. And normally what happened with anencephaly babies is that they actually are born without a skull. They don't live long. They breed for some can breed for a couple of minutes, hours, maybe a day, but they pass right on. Or they come through the birth canal and be stillborn. So with my faith, my son was stillborn. And it was the most heart-wrenching experience in my life. And it was so traumatic for me where I couldn't see a woman that is pregnant. If I see a baby, I start crying. If I start walking and I hear a sound of a child, I start crying. At the time, my husband, I did not want him to touch me because I was afraid if he ever touched me, I would get pregnant. So I rushed to the hospital, up to my doctor's appointment, and got on birth control for the first time because that event caused me to feel like if I get a fourth one, what's going to happen? So we go through so much, even though, I'm not saying that is your faith, but that was one of the most traumatic experience, one of my traumatic experience of my life. And, even I remember after his birth, I lost it. Like I couldn't think, I couldn't see any, I didn't know where I was. I remember driving, and I was driving on Lake Mary Boulevard, but I didn't know where I was. So at the time, I had to seek, because of, grief counseling. I went through grief counseling. One of the things the counselor said to me, she said, Mellisa, whenever you are driving, you get into your car until you get over this process, just remind yourself where you're going. If you have to put a sticky note, if you have to say it aloud, if you have to record yourself, just to give you a quick reminder. So I will drive. I'll be driving and said, I'm going to Tanisha's house. I'm going to Tanisha's house. Okay, I see the McDonald's. Okay, I see the Wendy's. Oh, okay, I'm heading to I-4, and I will have to talk it out. I remember even one time I went to the grocery store. I went to Publix, and I came out of Publix. But I didn't even know where my car was. And I'm there looking around, where is my car? And I'm pressing the button, I'm pressing it, and I'm pressing the alarm, and can't hear the alarm. So these two young guys looked at me and said, ma'am, are you looking for your car? I said, yes, I am. I can't find my car. Lo and behold, the car was right in front of me. I didn't hear the car, and I couldn't see the car. I was so embarrassed because it's like, how did you not hear the car? So that type of trauma can cause you to really kind of, like that grief, is feeling of anxious and related to that loss. Most often, death of a loved one is hard. Yes, I didn't carry him through, but guess what? He still was my baby. I felt him. I knew he was there, and I named him. And I was going through the different the 5 stages of grief. I was in denial, like, oh no, what happened? My son is not here, and I had to go bury my baby and, claim his body. And I'm like, wait, but this is not happening. Sometimes I told myself I can feel him kicking, and then I began to be the second phase. I was angry with God. I was angry at myself. I was like, did I take the wrong medication? Was it the insulin? Did I start blaming myself? Like, okay, you did this to the baby. And I was like, my mind was playing tricks on me. And then I started bargaining and like, okay, you know what, Mellisa, maybe you can have another one. Maybe, that was just, you can wait a year and you guys can try again. Then I started into that phase of depression, and I didn't want to get up out of bed. I was sitting in the dark, and I didn't want to eat. I didn't want to do anything. And then after a while, I remember sitting at my table, and the Spirit of God said, it's time to write. And I'm like, write what? And I was like, done with God. Like, seriously, Lord, write my story, share my story about my son, Caleb? No, I don't want to do that. And he said, no, it is time. It is time to write. Write your story about your son. Let the world know that you understand that you lost a son and Chelsea lost a sibling too. That's the title of the book. I talk about my stage of grief, and it was every Wednesday and every 30th of the month. I was like, it was the hardest for me. Every time Wednesday come, I was numbed. Every 30th of the month, I was numb because he was born on Wednesday, October 30th, 2019. So I was totally numbed by everything. And I really just didn't want to feel at that time. So I was going through the phase of depression. But my acceptance came about when God told me to write this book. And I wrote it. And I published it. If you go on Amazon, if you go to Mellisa Books, that's MELLISA books.com, you will pull up I Understand I Lost a Son and a Sibling Too. It was paperback. It's a paperback. It was printed October 30th, 2020. 1 year after my son's birth, this book was published. I made sure I celebrated my son a year later with his story. So, grieving, having, trauma, it's a lot. Trauma is something that we all, some people go through, and we don't know how to deal with it, right? Sometimes it's a challenge, but it's important to seek professional help. I remember when I lost my son, Caleb, I had to seek not only for me, but for my daughter. So I went through 12 weeks of grief counseling. That was my professional help to help me through that, my trauma of losing my son, and I went through that phase, and I had to go through 12 weeks, and it was the most healthiest 12 weeks. I had an amazing therapist. She walked me through. She even walked me through the trauma of me saying it's time for me to get out my marriage and file for divorce, because it was also a traumatic experience being in that relationship, And I had the strength to say, I can do this. I can, not only deal with the trauma of losing myself, but my son, but I'm going to get this divorce done finally, so I can free myself to live again, And so I say to you, get professional help. And not only did I get it for myself, but I also joined a support group for other mothers, other families that lost loved ones. And my daughter joined a group where siblings lost where other people lost siblings or their loved ones. And it gave her an opportunity, gave Chelsea an opportunity to talk out her emotions. It gave her an opportunity to do play therapy, So not only seek that help for yourself, but if you do have a child involved as well, make sure they have the opportunity to be able to seek the help that they need. So how can someone, I'm going to wrap this up. I know that I'm talking. Again, you are listening to Women Emerge with Mellisa Lambert. Today is Wellness Wednesday. This is a hard topic for me because this is the first time on this air that I was able to share a little bit about my story, and we talking about trauma. There's different types of trauma, and one of the trauma that I faced personally was the loss of my three heavenly babies. I had 2 back-to-back miscarriages, and I named all my kids. My first miscarriage was Benjamin Jr., my second was Faith, and my third was my son. He wasn't a miscarriage. He was a stillborn, and his name was Caleb Chiazam. And those were my traumatic events in my life, and I had other traumatic events, but those were the 3 that stood out for me. And so how can someone heal from trauma? The first thing is acknowledge the event. And I told you how I was able to acknowledge the event. I was able to write a story a year after. I was able to write that story about my son. I was able to publish a book on October 30th, 2020. You can check it out at go to either LambertPublishingHouse.com or go to Mellisa, Mellisa books.com. I was able to acknowledge the event, recognize what happened, and was able to share his story in a book. The second thing is accept support. I was able to accept support by going to counseling, going to a support group, and bringing my daughter to play therapy. The third thing and how you can help someone or yourself heal from trauma is practice self-care. I had to begin to go out and get my massage, get my acupuncture, do some physical therapy, do certain things to help me feel good, take care of my hair, my nails, my feet. That was my personal self-care. Do some I call it walk therapy because I love to walk, right? And the fourth thing you can do is focus on your physical health. I remember that year after around 2020, like a year later, I had to really focus on my health. I lost weight. I began to be more conscious about my intake of food. I was able to, even to this day, I'm still down 17 pounds. And looking and feeling better. I began to focus on my physical health, which helped me focus on my mental health as well. So the next thing is practice mindfulness or meditation. That helped me so much. I was able to sit down and just meditate on the goodness of God and relax my mind and put my mind at ease and practice mindfulness of just being mindful of where I am, my present moment, and where I want to be. So that was the fifth thing. The sixth thing I want you to think about and how you can help someone or even yourself heal from trauma is do something fun and creative each day. Like, I know for some people this may not be fun or creative, but I love business. Every day I find something to do to continue my creativity as a woman, as a businesswoman, and I find things to do with my daughter to make it fun. I love nature, so you will see me always out grounding or walking or enjoying just nature in general. The seventh thing I would say to help someone heal or yourself heal from trauma is avoid addictions. Anything that you will be addicted to, avoid it. Don't bring it in your present. The eighth thing is to get back into your routine. And I had to learn, Mellisa, you cannot sit in the house. You can't sit there and cry all the time. You can't think about Caleb. You can't pick up his blanket. You can't, pick up his pictures. You can't do that. You have to move forward. You got to get back in your routine of going to church, going to events, going to the family house, going to my friends. Get back into routine. And the ninth thing is journal your experience. I told you what I did. I wrote my experience and I published it. I wrote my experience and I published it. For you, journal your experience. Write it down. Maybe one day you will write your own book and you come through LambertPublishingHouse.com and get your book published. You never know. And the last thing to help you or someone heal from trauma is don't rush the process. I had to go through the phases of my grief, but I did not rush my process. Do I remember Caleb? Every October 30th is his birthday, and me and my daughter celebrated. We always get some cupcakes, and we light a candle, and we say our prayers and our thanks. And I know I want to see my babies in heaven someday. But don't rush the process. Heal through your process. So again, I'm going to go right through the 10. How can someone or yourself heal from trauma? There are 10 tips I want to give to you. 1, acknowledge that the event. 2, accept support. 3, practice self-care. 4, focus on your physical health. 5, practice mindfulness or meditation. 6, do something fun and creative each day. 7, avoid addictions. 8, get back into your routine. 9, journal your experience. And 10, don't rush the process. So we were talking about trauma today, and this is Wellness Wednesday. And one part of wellness is knowing what triggers you, and learning how to heal from your trauma. And you heard me share my story about one of my trauma. I had 3 back-to-back trauma, 2 miscarriage and 1 stillborn. But I had to work myself to heal through my trauma. And there's an amazing book that it's called He Restores My Soul. The author is Apostle Sonia Thompson. That book helped me also heal. He Restores My Soul. I'm going to see if I can find it. Again, let me just make sure it says, He Restores My Soul. And it's through Apostle Sonia Thompson. That book was just truly amazing. And I tell you no lie, I am so thankful for that woman. I'm so thankful for Apostle Sonia Thompson for writing that book, because that book helped me to get over my son, not get over him, but actually know that better days are coming. It was just such a breath of fresh air to really read that book and just feel that everything is going to be just fine. It's called He Restores My Soul, Dr. Sonia Thompson. So I think you can I'll put her link in there so you can check her out. But if you're ever gone through any trauma what that you have gone through, that book is a must. It helps you go through your restoration of your soul. It helps you walk you through your pain, and it helps you understand the promises of God for your life. So if I can ever share you a book that will help you through your trauma, is a book called He Restores My Soul by Dr. Sonia L. Thompson. All right, so we're done for today. I mean, listen, I didn't want to come to you too long. I want to give you the nuggets and the information to really help you. Hopefully this Wednesday we talked about different types of trauma, emotional, physical trauma. I shared with you my own trauma with my losing my first miscarriage, second miscarriage, and my son Caleb, who was stillborn. And I told you how I healed through my trauma, and I gave you 10 tips. Right? So I want you to tune into this, listen to it again if you need to. Share this with a friend. You never know who needs it. And I also share a book called He Restores My Soul from Apostle Sonia Thompson. That book is just truly amazing. It helped me heal and also helped me restore my soul for the soul tie to my son, Caleb. Right? So definitely check that out. But follow me at Mellisa, that's Mellisa, Mellisa Lambert on Facebook and Instagram. Also, we do have our podcast that is every Wednesday and Thursday, WomenEmergeRadio.com. You can also go on Facebook, follow us at WomenEmergeNetwork and WomenEmergeWellness. Definitely go to WomenEmergeNetwork.com to check us out. Subscribe to our digital magazine, WomenEmergeConnect.com. If you want to become an author and just want to become discover who you are as an author, check us out at LambertPublishingHouse.com. LambertPublishingHouse.com. You can definitely get your mind mapping session with us there. I'm just excited that you were able to just stop in and join us on the air today. You were listening to Women Emerge with Mellisa Lambert, and I'm glad to always join you on Wellness Wednesday. And today we talked about trauma, the different types of trauma, and I shared my story, and I shared how you can also be impacted and help somebody else, help them how to heal. I gave you 10 ways that a person can heal from their trauma. Please tune in again, listen to this. Subscribe, talk to me, share with me your thoughts on this process. Go definitely send me an email through info@WomenEmergeRadio.com. Until next Wednesday, listen, take care, take charge, and just remember, your greatest wealth is your health. Remember that you have the power to change it. Each and every day, you have the power to do something good for your health, because that is your greatest wealth. All right, so until next time, bye for now.
Thank you for listening to Women Emerge with Mellisa Lambert, where Mellisa speaks with leaders, experts, and motivators who share their journeys and their stories through personal and professional growth, knowledgeable tips, and lessons learned that will empower you to grow. Follow Mellisa and Women Emerge Network on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok at MellisaSLambert and at Women Emerge Network. And visit www.WomenEmergeNetwork.com. Remember, when you know better, you can do better, especially when God is for you.